Biden trails Trump in polls. Did a lawmaker try to make it illegal to discriminate against pedophiles? And Title 42 ends. What does that mean for the southern border? And more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. A Hilton hotel manager in Nashville, Tennessee, was arrested and charged with aggravated burglary and assault after entering a guest's room and waking him up by sucking on his toes. While this is very disturbing, to be fair to the manager, the guest did not have the Do Not Disturb sign out. What do you think it's there for? Also, the guest didn't specify how he wanted his wake-up call. So, is the manager a creep? Or was this guest a kink shamer that needs to learn how to communicate better? Speaking of people being arrested, New York representative and prolific liar George Santos was arrested by the Justice Department and faces 13 criminal charges, including campaign embezzlement and so much fraud. Santos responded to these charges by saying, "They're just persecuting me because I'm Jewish and black." Also, since this is George Santos we're talking about, I have to clarify that's just a joke. For now. Knowing him, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up using that as his defense. And while we're on the topic of politicians who aren't Jewish, Joe Biden. In a poll conducted by ABC News and the Washington Post, 68% of Americans said Biden, who will be 82 in 2024 when he runs for re-election, is too old to be president, which I think is ageist. People can do a lot when they get older. Why, Moses didn't confront the Pharaoh until he was 80. Noah didn't build the ark until he was over 500. And Legolas was 2,931 years old when the War of the Rings broke out. And just look at that complexion, if anything. Joe Biden isn't old enough to run for president. When asked about concerns over his age, Biden tried to put people's minds to rest by saying this.
Because I've acquired a hell of a lot of wisdom. I know more than the vast majority of people. I'm more experienced than anybody's ever run for the office. And I think I've proven myself to be honorable as well as also effective.
Did that statement just get back from a month-long vacation? Because there's a lot to unpack. First of all, being old doesn't automatically mean you know more. If that were the case, Jeopardy's Tournament of Champions would take place in an assisted living facility. Second, Joe Biden bragging about being effective is like Wendy's bragging about being healthy. You can see that they're trying to be, but when the best you can do is dumping chili on iceberg lettuce and calling it a salad, you might want to boast about something else. Speaking of unhealthy food, according to White House aides, Joe Biden is being pushed by his wife, Jill, to eat a healthier diet leading up to his re-election campaign. Joe reportedly doesn't like vegetables and is said to eat like a child, meaning he prefers peanut butter and jelly and pizza. Not that White House aides need to defeat him by saying, "Here comes the airplane." Biden will need all the help he can get. In the ABC Washington Post poll, his approval rating was 36%. It didn't help that the House Oversight Committee announced they found records that show the Biden family received over $10 million from foreign nationals while Biden was vice president. But maybe by banning conservative media from Biden press conferences, maybe that'll help bury the story. More on that in an upcoming episode. But the situation is so bad for Biden that now Donald Trump is leading among undecided voters, which is saying something since Trump was criminally indicted by a Manhattan grand jury over alleged business fraud concerning alleged hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels over an alleged affair between the two, allegedly. Trump has said the indictment will only make him stronger. When the charges were announced over a month ago, he said, "I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it, so our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we'll defeat Joe Biden." So far, judging by the most recent polls, it seems he might be right. But that's not the only trial involving Trump. He was accused of raping advice columnist E. Jean Carroll in the mid-90s and defaming her by calling her claims a hoax. Jurors rejected Carroll's claim that she was raped, but did find him responsible for a lesser degree of sexual abuse, and found Trump liable in a civil trial and ordered him to pay $5 million. Because how dare Trump deny rape allegations that there wasn't enough evidence to confirm? Trump didn't testify or even show up at any point during the trial. Wait, Trump didn't want to speak? Is he sick or something? Trump initially sought to have the trial delayed due to the media frenzy caused by his criminal indictment and fear it would hurt the jury selection. Trump is facing so many trials he literally can't keep up with them. And besides the two I mentioned, we're still waiting to see if there will be any follow-up on the January 6th hearing and election interference probe in Georgia. And he was impeached twice, and yet, despite dealing with all that, he's still running a political campaign and is ahead in the polls. Honestly, his energy is kind of inspiring. He's like the embodiment of the little engine that could. More after the break. Welcome back. Prospect Park, New Jersey Mayor Mohammed Karula said he was racially profiled and accused the White House of Islamophobia after he was denied entry to an event. It was a celebration of the end of Ramadan, and Muslim elected officials from around the country attended. So why couldn't Karula? Well, he says he's received no explanation or apology for the exclusion, though the Council on American Islamic Relations did inform him that a name matching his was on an FBI terrorism watch list. Karula said, "What are we going to do about the targeting of Arabs, Muslims, South Asians by federal agencies that are basically not telling us why we are being harassed at airports, border crossings, and now for me to be denied entry into the People's House is baffling." The Secret Service, however, isn't giving any explanation. Unfortunately, we are not able to comment further on the specific protective means and methods used to conduct our security operations at the White House. Of course, the real reason for his exclusion is obvious. He's from New Jersey. Ugh. President Biden met with congressional leaders, including Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, to try and resolve what to do about the debt ceiling before the country goes broke and defaults on its loans, which could happen as early as July 1st. The meeting ended without a resolution being agreed upon. The government might go broke by the first of the month. Now they know how half of America feels when rent is due. Maybe they can pawn the Liberty Bell for some quick cash. As if Democrats and Republicans failing for so long to come up with a compromise wasn't bad enough, matters were further complicated as the National Association of Government Employees are suing Biden and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. They claim the nation's borrowing limit is unconstitutional and violates separation of powers because it forces the president to cut spending already approved by Congress in order to avoid a default. People are especially concerned about the debt ceiling debate, as Biden administration officials indicated they were open to using a clause in the 14th Amendment that would allow the president to bypass congressional approval to raise the debt limit. This has many people nervous, including Janet Yellen, who indicated this action could lead to a constitutional crisis. And a constitutional crisis could lead to lawmakers not being able to do their job, people losing faith in the government, and the country being on the brink of a civil war. So, basically what America's been living through for the last 15 years. What they call a constitutional crisis, I call a slow news day. This would be way scarier if it leads to HBO not airing the last episodes of Succession. Now that's a crisis. Honestly, good TV is probably the only thing actually preventing the Civil War these days. Anyway, Civil War is a dark topic. Let's move on to something lighter. Groomers. And to avoid YouTube demonetization, let me just tell YouTube's algorithms, I'm talking about pet groomers. You may have heard that a trans Minnesota lawmaker tried to make it illegal to discriminate against pedophiles. The story gained traction in right-wing media like the Daily Caller and the Daily Wire, and was shared like crazy across social media. So is it true? Well, like learning to play Avril Lavigne's biggest hit on Didgeridoo, it's complicated. The gist is Minnesota State Representative Leigh Fink, a trans woman, introduced a bill known as the Take Pride Act. The Take Pride Act updates Minnesota's anti-discrimination laws, specifically for members of the LGBTQ community. It does this by adding a more modern definition of sexual orientation and barring discrimination on the basis of gender identity. But where this gets strange is the Take Pride Act also removes language from Minnesota's existing Human Rights Act that excludes physical attraction to children from being considered a sexual orientation. Many assumed this meant pedophiles would become a protected class. Fink defended this, saying, "Of course pedophilia is not a sexual orientation. The language never should have been included in the statutory definition in the first place. Crimes against children are located in Minnesota's criminal statutes, and again, they remain unchanged." So she's saying pedophilia not being a sexual orientation is obvious and didn't need to be added to the law in the first place. And the pedophile is more of a criminal matter, so this wasn't a move to protect pedophiles so much as it was to remove redundancies in laws? Considering how every bill is so long it feels like it was written by Leo Tolstoy, that's not the strongest excuse. Also, if this was indeed the case, the timing and optics of this are horrible since there are so many accusations of grooming children coming from Republicans, which has led to laws being passed banning children at drag shows, causing a gay pride parade in Florida to be canceled since it featured drag queens and children would be present. I haven't seen people this scared of children being harmed by someone dressed as a woman since Little Red Riding Hood. Although the Big Bad Wolf was a horrible drag queen since he didn't even try to shave. The Minnesota House of Representatives added an amendment to the Take Pride Act, keeping the clarification that pedophilia is not a sexual orientation, and it passed unanimously. The bill is now awaiting approval in the state Senate. Honestly, of all the redundancies written into laws, I'm happy to keep this one. If anything, there should be language added to every bill making it okay to discriminate against pedophiles. Statute HB 19X11 states that a 2% sales tax shall be added to any item sold containing black licorice. Also, if you want to shame any Jeffrey Epstein wannabes, you just go right ahead. And after the break, Biden wants airline customers compensated for delayed flights. Welcome back. President Biden and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg proposed a rule that would require airlines to pay for customers' meals, hotels, and ride shares, as well as offering refunds when flights are delayed or canceled for non-weather related reasons. While that's great, the main issue isn't that travelers are hungry and need a place to stay when airlines strand them. It's the fact that airlines strand them. And it happens more and more often. This is like a doctor offering $20 gift cards to Chili's as a way to apologize after killing more grandmas than Andrew Cuomo, who still hasn't faced any consequences for that, by the way. But at least Biden's trying, I guess. I can see why. More than anyone, he hates it when the airplane is delayed. Tucker Carlson announced he would continue his canceled Fox News show on Twitter, which is a surprise to many. I mean, a news show on a social media platform? Who ever heard of anything like that over the past 10 years? Boy, that Tucker is a real trendsetter. So original. Title 42, a public health measure implemented by President Trump in March 2020 during the COVID pandemic that made it easier to turn away immigrants at the southern border, was officially lifted on Thursday. And since everyone knew this was coming for months now, they were fully prepared. The federal government worked with state governments, and everything went off without a hitch. Just kidding, it got messier than a custody battle on Family Double Dare. Truly a testament to Biden's wisdom and effectiveness. The U.S. sent National Guard troops to the border to prepare for a massive influx of immigrants who will try and claim asylum, something they haven't been able to do for 3 years. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott sent in a Texas Tactical Border Force. The Texas National Guard said these additional forces will bolster the thousands of Texas National Guard service members already assisting local and state law enforcement agencies to secure the border, stop the smuggling of drugs, weapons, and people into Texas, and prevent, detect, and interdict transnational criminal behavior between the ports of entry. And they'll be needed, as some sources say Biden's top border officials said they were prepared to mass release immigrants into city streets if there wasn't room to hold them, which there isn't. This feels like the biggest, messiest, and saddest game of Red Rover of all time. As I've said before, the southern border has been a mess for a long time. Recently, House Republicans sponsored a bill, the Secure the Border Act of 2023, that would resume construction on the U.S.-Mexico border wall and seek additional protections. But Biden vowed to veto this bill if it passes, saying, The bill does nothing to address the root causes of migration, reduces humanitarian protections, and restricts lawful pathways, which are critical alternatives to unlawful entry. Okay, so this isn't the plan the White House wants. But since they knew this was coming, surely they have another plan in place, right? Just like they have a perfect compromise for the debt ceiling crisis, right? The Biden administration did put a plan in place that would put restrictions on asylum and allow quick deportations, and that plan was implemented 48 hours before Title 42 was lifted. They had months to prepare for this, and they enacted their plan 2 days ahead of time. Is Biden really just two procrastinating middle schoolers stacked on top of each other in an old man suit? This is a big problem the White House and Congress need to address. And hopefully they'll address the actual root problem instead of just offering hotel stays to those affected. Especially because if you wind up in a hotel, the experience can be quite disturbing. So what do you think about the stories we covered this week? Leave your comments below. And if you want to help us deliver nonpartisan news, be sure to support America Uncovered by going to patreon.com/America Uncovered. All it takes is as little as $1 or more per episode to fight YouTube's censorship and demonetization. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.